with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bozak,
Here.
Commissioner Ensland,
Here.
Commissioner Loving,
Here.
Commissioner Scott,
Here.
Commissioner McCarty.
Here.
And I was absent.
Said he was gonna try to make it tonight and he got stuck in traffic and can't get home. Approval minutes, May 11th.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensland,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarty,
Yes.
Commissioner Bozak,
Yes.
Commissioner Loving.
Yes. Reports, Roseanne?
Nothing.
No.
Brad?
No.
Jen?
No.
Everybody's not here. RDC Attorney Clay.
No, sir.
Engineer sent an email this afternoon that they had nothing to report. RDC consultant, Colonel Tina.
Good evening, commissioners. I just want to give a brief update. We continue to field some economic development opportunities relative to some of our larger vacant sites here in Burns Harbor. And we have received communication from the Northwest Indiana Forum regarding the READY grant. So they have requested some grant agreements between their organization and the town of Burns Harbor. So we're getting some progress on that. They did hire the READY grants, so that'll be some additional capacity to support this process. And then keeping it brief tonight because we do have a special guest man, a town partner here tonight, the National Park Service. We have Superintendent Paul Labovitz, as well as Park Ranger Rocky Wilkerson, who's responsible for coordinating Marquette Greenway across the national park. So they will be presenting today an update on Marquette Greenway from a regional and federal perspective, and then talk about linkages here to Burns Harbor, the work that we're doing, and just the continual value of the partnership that the town of Burns Harbor and the National Park Service have relative to highlighting the Indiana Dunes National Park as an asset to the region. So they are here tonight. And with that, I'll conclude my report.
Thank you. All right, correspondence. All right. Tina, I'll turn it back over to you. Process here, figure out what you guys want to do. Floor is yours.
As I just mentioned, we do have a special guest tonight, two special guests tonight, the National Park Service Superintendent Paul Labovitz, as well as Park Ranger Rocky Wilkerson. As I explained, the National Park Service has been an integral partner to the development of Marquette Greenway over the years, and especially last year as we launched the the next level trail section of the park. And they're here tonight to give you an update on all things Marquette Greenway, as well as any highlights with respect to the RAISE grant, which NERC is spearheading to supplement NERC funding or supplement Marquette Greenway funding. We had talked in the past about phase 1B, which is, kind of gets us over Norfolk Southern and over to the eastern boundary with the town of Porter. So they'll talk about that tonight. And with that, I welcome Superintendent Labovitz and Rocky Wilkerson. And get this turned on.
Thank you. Just sit here and shout out to your stand up. You need me to set my microphone? Probably not. However, yeah. No, great to see you. Great to be back in Burns Harbor face to face. It's a very exciting topic to talk about. And we heard some reference to COVID earlier. COVID really underscored the need for places like public open space. And so when we were out here cutting the ribbon on the Burns Harbor section of trail not long ago, it was kind of prophetic to have a facility like that in your community. And as a national park and your neighbor, we were overwhelmed with the number of people trying to get outside to be healthy, to the point where it was unhealthy to be in the park. We were overrun. And so what we need to do is we need more facilities like this, and the Marquette Greenway, which had been at the point of discussion for some decades, is now starting to come together. And so you guys are sort of ahead of the curve. You're the early adopters as you're building and planning to complete the stretch through your community. Congratulations. Smart, smart, smart. It's kind of interesting and not surprising that some of the only stretches that aren't done yet are in the national park, because Uncle Sam is not as innovative as local government. I'll just say it that way without losing my job. I hope there's no media here. Yeah, so Uncle Sam works in mysterious ways. But Rafi, my colleague, has been focusing on this with some other things he does at the park for the last couple of years, and has done a great job at trying to build a puzzle of 1 billion pieces with no box cover to show you what it actually looks like when it's done. If that's the analogy that works. And or if you're into spinning plates, there are 55 spinning plates, and the sound that's deafening is the sound of smashing plates. Every once in a while, one falls over. There's so many moving parts working between Michigan City and the city of Gary and the national park and all the county and municipal partners. It's really an interesting puzzle to envision 55 miles of bike trail to connect Michigan and Illinois to our region. And so there are some really challenging pieces of this project. And one of them is called Norfolk Southern. And so we believe we've cracked that nut. And we owe our success with Norfolk Southern. It's really about relationships, where Christmas a year ago, they had a big derailment at county line. And they needed access to park property to get their tracks back open, because that was $1 billion a day worth of goods that traveled that track. And so we collaborated and cooperated with them to get it open. And it wasn't hard, because it was not a pristine part of the park. It was land between railroad tracks, but we got them back open in a couple days. And so we, in that process, met a gentleman by the name of Derek Sutliff, who is the Norfolk Southern's government affairs person located in Indianapolis. And Derek finally came up and had lunch with us one day over a year ago. And it turns out Derek is a national park visitor with his family. Loves to travel to national parks. And greasing the skids with a couple junior ranger badges and a couple Euros from George's. You know, magic happened, and Norfolk Southern finally started returning phone calls about the Marquette Greenway. And we talked to a colleague of Derek's in Atlanta who does their infrastructure work and make sure projects like this fit into Norfolk Southern's needs. And we're engaged in this conversation now and getting ready to work with them on the specific designs of the kind of the bridges in the trail alignment itself that potentially impacts Norfolk Southern property. And we surprisingly learned, it wasn't a surprise, that the railroad's MO when folks like us call about trails is to just not respond. And after a couple of years, we stopped calling. And we persisted over years, and then had this derailment, and instantly they needed us. And all of a sudden, here we are, we have a dialogue. And we feel very confident, both on the Minoki Prairie bridge that we're going to need to prevent going under their bridge that needs some repair, and also a very large bridge that was removed just west of our Douglas Center in Lake County in the city of Gary, that actually crosses a lot more of their active track. And we can actually see, I would say, light at the end of the tunnel, but it's actually light at the end of the bridge. And it's very exciting that we're just some money issues, but I'm not that worried about the money, that we have the collaboration of the railroad. So what's important right now, we don't have 100%, here's exactly where the trail's going to go, but we conceptually know about what those options are. And the important thing right now is to continue to work toward making the connection, so that when this trail begins and ends, it's all connected. It sounds crazy, But you'd be surprised that, and you can go to roads in Indiana where roads don't quite meet, and there's a little jog. You know, it's a little, we don't want the bike trail to have that kind of stuff. And so, the Minoki Prairie piece still got a couple of challenges. But it's not a matter of if it will happen, it's when and how it happens, and that's where we're at. And so Rafi's gonna go over some of the more detailed stuff. We're fortunate to have Rafi, who's really, has the right skill set to focus on the level of detail that this project needed. And he has helped solve some real estate problems that were blocking this project in the city of Gary that were 100 years old. Literally, somebody who owned some land that was jamming up the right-of-way acquisition, and he had gone back to Russia in 1909, and they didn't know who the heirs to the property were, and nobody knew how to handle this. And Rafi and Deb Backus in the city of Gary have figured it out. And so the man is a magician. Oh, he's a magician. He will pull a trail out of a hat. So any questions for me? I would love to come back to and talk to council about what's going on in the park. We had done that in the past and COVID kind of jammed us up. But there's some really, really cool things beyond the Marquette Greenway in the park that I think the town would be excited to hear about. So I look forward to coming back. Wonderful. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Rafi.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. As Paul said, I've been lucky enough for the last 2 years to dedicate most of my day on this thing. And as he said, there's like the place in Gary, it's 125 feet. It's a 60-mile trail, but I fought for 2 years for 125 feet of trail.
I have a question. How did that property never go into a tax sale? Did the guy from Russia keep paying property taxes every year?
So eventually, this is the whole key. If you want to know that one, so yeah, Dimitri Friedlander.
We were gonna get to this no matter what.
Okay.
I was gonna ask if you-
Right. So he lost a court battle in 1906 that allowed the Indiana Harbor Belt or its predecessors to build this, what was called now the Dune Park branch. And he seems to have skipped the country. And it was never a question, therefore, of like there weren't people fighting us to get it. It was how to legally get it. And actually, believe it or not, the issue we had is that being the federal government, we couldn't do it. And so eventually, we got the right people in the city of Gary to do it for us. And we got the right people, Liz Johnson with Senator Mervan, long time with Pete Piotrowski. She went to the Board of Commissioners of Lake County and got them to wipe out 120 years of taxes and donate the property to the city of Gary. We're right now in the redemption period, and then they will eventually donate it to us.
Oh, so no one ever bought it at tax sale because it was a worthless piece of property.
Yes, and the problem is it's underneath 30 feet of railroad ballast because it's a railroad bed, and so and we're not done. There's about another 13 pieces that. And the problem with the railroads, as you may or may not know, is they played above the law and still do for 150 years. And in particular in Lake County, if nothing has happened to that piece of property prior to 1938, then all bets are off. There's supposedly a basement someplace with old records, but none of it's cataloged. And so that's been the big problem there. But there's a story for each of these. But I love this graphic. It's one of those that I'm a graphics type of guy. And when I made it, it really put into perspective what this trail means for Northwest Indiana. And obviously there's a whole connection to the west around through the rest of Gary and East Chicago and Hammond all the way to Chicago, and obviously off into Michigan City. Michigan City is jamming right now. So let me just start on the east. Michigan City is doing very well. I'll try to make sure everyone can see this. But so this is the Singing Sands Trail. It connects right by Mount Baldy. They're building again this year. So they've got it through town, they've got it up, they're building in front of their Friendship Gardens that way, and they're heading out east, and that's very exciting. And again, this raise grant that Tina mentioned it filled in so many gaps for us. Hats off to Mitch Borloga at Nursey. He's the person who did this, but it was able to give $1 million here, $2 million here to some of these gaps. And so that's helping Michigan City out and elsewhere. This big central gap from Mineral Springs Road by Dune Acres all the way out to Mount Baldy, which is called the Calumet Trail, has been around since the 70s, is a worthless piece of trail, unfortunately, because 50 years ago it was high and dry, and Mother Nature has now decided that it's going to be a wetland. And so if you ever try to ride that trail, it is a gravel road that's underwater about 11 months out of the year. And they approached us, Porter County did, and they said, we can't do anything with this western portion because it's already funded. And we're gonna engineer it, and it was a drier section, and the same thing over here, that was already funded, but could we work with the National Park Service on the whole center section? And Paul thankfully said yes. And so basically from the Dune Park train station, we're moving it into national parkland. So the whole middle 6 miles is getting off the NISCO corridor and going into the woods. And there are some phenomenal sections, much like Trail Creek right on your guys' back door, how spectacular that is down there. Not Trail Creek, sorry, that's up.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, no,
Salt Creek?
Salt Creek, gosh, too many creeks, Salt Creek. It is really beautiful in here as well. There's a little trail called, or a little creek called Dunes Creek that is absolutely beautiful. So that's actually being engineered this summer, compliance, archaeology, environmental. We will hope to take necessary trees out over the winter and begin construction this coming summer, so in 23. So it'll be a huge section of trail that will open up by the end of next year. This whole sort of eastern section will open up. This is the first thing that's gonna go, that's gonna start in December, once the double track goes through. So that hooks in to an already existing trail here called the Porter Brickyard that was completed in 2014. And then we obviously have this section here, which, and the other thing I wanted to show you is I circled Burns Harbor. You guys are really central to the whole thing. I mean, look at the park from here, map edge to map edge. Burns Harbor is really the key to connecting the eastern and western portions of our park. So I really thought that was sort of interesting to bring that to you tonight. But the whole Minoki Prairie section obviously is a challenge. I want to say that I want to work with the town, with the consultants, and anything that the park can do, we will put our force behind it. Obviously, that includes negotiating, working with Norfolk Southern, but anything else. As you know, we already had one approved route through Minoki Prairie. If we have to move that route, we can do that. But, I'm also currently working with Michael Berry at the town of Porter to get them to step up in there. I think we're gonna apply for some next level trail funding to get from the last little mile to get over to Howe Road. So that's not a stalled section. We're very active and want to get that completed as soon as possible. But again, I just want to pledge that Norfolk Southern is not easy. It's not an inexpensive bridge. I fully understand that. But that the park will work with the town and anybody else that we can to get that moving and get that completed. And then obviously, in Salt Creek, that is an active construction project that is due to actually start construction here within the next 2 weeks. So we already had a pre-construction meeting, and that has to be completed by the end of this calendar year. The money, because they lost a year of COVID, they're under extreme pressure due to the funding to have that completed this calendar year. So it should be that next summer you'll be able to ride from here to Dairy Queen back in Ameriplex, right? That is just fantastic. The next section is difficult. We got to get up to Porter's Lakefront Riverwalk, but there's raised funding for that for Portage, and so it's also should be in play. Obviously, we just cannot do as many balls are in the air. We cannot do everything all at once, and because Portage is currently doing Salt Creek, and then we'll tackle that connection next. And then it's really our heavy lift. So, that's the other big thing, as Paul said, is that we are unfortunate. We really should be first to the game, but a lot of times in the national park, we're last to the game because we are so hand-tied in what we can and cannot do. But we are finally coming to the table to get the trail from Portage Lakefront Riverwalk all the way over. And most people don't realize, but at the very edge of that map is actually the old Union Station in Geary. So at Broadway there by the Railcat Stadium, and there's an abandoned white train station. Just to the east of that is our park. And so that's going to be the full extent of the trail coming out of our park. The first section that we're going to complete is going to be from the entrance to West Beach to our Paul Douglas Center. So that'll be a nice center section of that. We have already had many meetings on that. We've had people out, and we will have an engineering firm out late this summer that will do all of the engineering analysis on that. We've gone through compliance on that. And once again, we will begin construction on that early next year, and we'll hope to complete that next year. And this year, we will then begin looking at getting from West Beach east to the Ogden Dunes town limit, and also look at getting across Lake Street. So that section is, we have 3 bridges that we have to put back. So there is a bridge at Grand Boulevard, if you know that area, but it's small and it was not built for bikes. So we will replace that next year. We've got to get across Lake Street, which is doable again. Unfortunately, the abutments, we have to put new abutments in, but we're going to be really good at replacing bridges there on Lake Street because unfortunately our Paul Douglas Center pedestrian overpass was condemned. And so we're actually going to be putting 2 bridges in at Lake Street there in the next 2 years, one for pedestrians, one for bikes. And as Paul mentioned, lastly, way out west, where right underneath where it says Indiana Harbor Belt, where it dips down, there is somewhere between a 300 and 350 foot gap. Luckily, the abutments are super tall, but it's a huge bridge over Norfolk Southern there. So, and so I'll close by saying, I really just want to hopefully see the energy and how this is actively being worked on across this region. And we're getting close, as Paul has taught me. You know, no one wants to complete the first mile. No one wants to give money for the first mile, but we're now, you know, we can really start to see the finish line. And it's a great time to be involved in this trail because it's really accelerating. And again, I'm always open. You know, Tina has all my contact information. If you guys have questions, if you ever need me to present or help, I will gladly do that. And if there's any questions you have, I'll open them out. Well, that's easy. Thank you.
Awesome. We're easy on questions. I guess I would just add, we recognized very early in our process 5 years ago that we were at the center of this map. And like you said, it's difficult to be first. I don't know that we were first, but we were awful close. And it wasn't cheap, but we recognized the importance of, you know, the trail to Burns Harbor, to the people that live here. So thanks for your help so far. And we're almost there, guys. We're so close.
Yeah, no, I also want to say hats off because I've said this many times to people like that. You know, Burns Harbor is just, you know, you don't have a huge population, but if they can do that, I mean, I've used you guys sort of to, you know, press on other communities to say like, hey, you guys can do this, you know, so.
We recognize the intrinsic benefits of having a trail to economic development and population growth. It's not, I hate to say it, but it's not that hard to see the very high level of benefits that come along with it. So, thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
I'm gonna check this out. It's a Windows machine. I probably just pull it.
So, you know, while Rafi's taking the drive out, this place has been perceived as a national park, as a summer beach park. And it's not fully realized its economic value to the region. And the trail will make this I said an 11.75 month visit because nobody will ride Christmas week unless they get a new bike for Christmas. Right, and so
It was sunny during Christmas.
Right, right.
We're actually out here.
And I'm being sarcastic because it'll be a 12-month
Yeah.
facility, and it will change the way people visit this place. And you may have heard the news that we are one of the most visited national parks in the country at about 5 million plus a year. And so we joke about we're 1% less the size of Yellowstone. We get more visitors. And so this is a place where the gateway communities like Burns Harbor have a really economic advantage of taking advantage of the folks who are coming to visit and spend money, but also as an amenity for your citizens. Because we get to benefit the most, we live here. We use it all year long. I'm a true believer, obviously.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm an order.
What I like is, you know, Marquette Greenway in Porter County kind of, it's either going through national park or skirting around civilization. All right, and that's going to be very beautiful to ride, but you've got basically two good, you know, right in the center, two good rest stops where tourists can dump some money. You know, you've got the Ameriplex and the Dairy Queen there, and then it's going right through the center of our development.
Yeah, Westport.
Instead of, because when you're on a bike and you've been riding for 50, 25 miles, even 200 yards of a side thing is a ways to go, especially when it's 95 degrees. But if you're going right through the center of places that serve cold, icy drinks and whatever, lunch, fine, we'll take it, and because of a national park, you really can't just build stuff, which is good. I mean, it keeps everything green and, and nice and pristine, but development just can't happen along most of this corridor,
So two things, we are working on north-south connections to the communities that are a little further off. So that the folks who live in those communities can access the trail without a car, and people from the trail can go into Chester and Porter, spend money. We're also upping our commercial activities game in the national park, and Rafi was just at the State Park Pavilion, which is now open. And so there's a lot of retail service industry that's recognizing the value of that 5 million visitation. And we're seeing a lot of investment in all the communities that see that potential.
And you guys are centered, like you said, to take advantage of it. And also coupled with when the double track project is done, there'll be 4 stations now that will accept bikes on trains. So Miller, I've been Dune Park as it does now, and Michigan City. So it also, I think there'll be opportunities for these interesting bike train routes. You can bike from one end of the park to the other, get on the train and go home, or go back to South Bend, or go to Chicago. And like I said, Burns Harbor is right in the middle of that. Like I said, with Westport, with the Mariplex, really 2 great stops in the middle.
And we'll come back and talk about paddling the Little Calumet River, canoe and kayaking. It's all going on right here. So
Very good.
thanks so much.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a great evening.
Thank
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tina.
Good, folks.
All right.
Number 2 on the old business Westport PUD update. So Tina and I spoke about this earlier. We are recommencing the bond discussions for the Westport PUD. There were a couple outstanding questions that still need a response. We're looking for a resolution on those by next week. So that's why we don't have anything for tonight. It's looking like we're going to be having this discussion in earnest next month on what we're going to do with the bond. So as soon as you can get the information back to us for review, I'd like to have it before the week of. Okay. Animal,
Sorry,
I'm sorry, no.
real quick, I did get an email from Keith at BP asking if we had a updated timeline on what was happening with Westport. They're starting to ramp up and get contractors lined up to do that work out there. So it's an opportunity. I just got the email, so we can, I'll
That's
contact.
positive. Yeah, that just further builds the momentum
That's
of.
construction time. Thank
Sorry, I
you,
didn't
thank you for
mean
that.
to-
No, I appreciate it, thank you. Animal waste dispensers. So I worked with Rob on this. We got 2 quotes back. One of them was $785, I think, and the other one was in the mid 380s for plastic bag holders. We talked through the logistics of who's going to keep these filled, who's going to pick up inevitably the plastic bags that are used and then thrown on the side of the trail anyway. It just feels like it would be better to put up signage that you were required to pick up after your dog, but not have free plastic bags that nobody places any value on.
What if we just put one at the very entrance of the trail? And someone can, if they have burned it on with them, they can grab it on the way. Like in case they forget or something.
That's,
I just have a suggestion. I noticed in Valpo at the Fairgrounds Park, they have one of those with signage that it was sponsored by a local vet. And since we have the new pet facility, the Rough Luxury Inn,
Yeah.
maybe go to them to see if they would want to sponsor and advertise. Just,
That's a great idea. That's a good-
So the sign itself, just full. The sign itself is $36.73 for the 18 by 24 sign. The right, the one was with shipping and handling and taxes was $4.26 a piece. And then the other one was
These are stock signs.
the
Mass produced, you know, I mean.
36.
Okay.
No, this is the
Okay, I was gonna say, corner.
yeah,
Well,
I was the one who Sean before I cut him off.
yeah, no, this is, these are back orders.
okay.
And then the other one is base $678.85. And then you include the taxes and shipping, gets it up over 700.
You know, if I may, we're gonna have to do something on this trail now. But we're gonna have to do something to the east of Westport as well. That will probably be similar to what we're gonna do over here. But then actually through Westport, where you have people living, you know, right along that way, I mean, there's gonna be row houses or whatever, and everybody's gonna be using that that stretch of the trail to walk their dogs. That's gonna have to be marked much more intensely, but it's also easier for us to get to. But that's where, if you're gonna put bag dispensers, put them on that stretch.
See, I think over there, maybe put more, but at least just put like one at the entrance over here,
I
so that,
think you're right. I
because
mean,
there's garbage cans along the trail. Correct? Yeah, I think. Like, because sometimes I take my dog, I just forget a bag, so I'm all about having just one of those plastic bag holders that I got in my pantry, I can shove my extra part bags in it for you too, but at the same time.
So the one that's 322.06 is green and white, plastic material, 18 by 12 is the box. The box is 18 inches high. And it comes with a sign on the post.
Does it say anything creative?
Pet waste, please keep this area clean. Clean up after your pet.
Right. It's better than like over $700.
I can't make motions.
Oh. Make a motion.
Yeah,
What's it?
to have Rob buy that.
To have Rob buy the pet dispenser, that's $322.06 before tax and shipping. Second.
It's a tie. You pick. I'll make a tie.
Pick one.
Roseanne.
Have a poop.
Right. Motion is second on the.
I do like
discussion.
Clay's comment though, which is something to think about when we're gonna put them in Westport. I mean, I know this is that would sponsor, the one that's right
I
there.
like that too.
Any further discussion? Roll call please.
Commissioner Ensign,
Yes.
Commissioner McHarg,
Yes.
Commissioner Bozak,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott.
Yes.
Commissioner Loving.
Yes. I think you just make a donation. donation to?
We'll figure it out.
To the RDC, because that's where the money comes from.
And I think, you know, it's worth asking for them to pay for the bags.
Well, he's already found a local business who will sponsor the first one.
I'm sorry about that.
He's found a local business to sponsor the first one.
Okay.
There's a daycare facility in town that's interested in doing it,
Maybe if someone sponsors the first one, other people will sponsor more.
maybe.
Maybe I'll pull up daycare.
All right,
People's time.
thank you for that. Number 4 is Market Greenway Phase 2 authorization to go out to bid. We did this last month. I'm sorry, Michelle.
Okay, I thought so, but
Should have come off the agenda. That one was done. And then number 5, hiring a press release person. Tina and I spoke about this. We think it's a good idea. What we would like to see first is a listing, not a comprehensive listing, but just a basic listing of what we want this to be. We want this person to accomplish on a calendar type basis, weekly, monthly, quarterly cadence of tasks, because that'll help us figure out, do we need to add an additional headcount, or do we just roll it into existing things that Tina is doing now? So
We talked about myself, but also town resources staff capacity. So it would just be a more coordinated effort.
So we just need a list
As a
of
start.
what we want this person to do. Work on that. This was your idea.
I was gonna give that one back to Brad.
I'm happy to start the email chain on it. I've got a couple ideas on what the person could be doing. The problem is I don't know enough about.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
it.
the main thing is instead of being reactive, be proactive. You know, to actually get out there and say, oh, wait a minute, this is coming up. You know, this is a photo op. And so we need some RDC and or council members to grab gold shovels and
Take pictures.
right, and take pictures and then send those out, or this, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, because you know, there's been a lot of opportunities that not just on Marquette Greenway and Westport, but not just this council, let it slide because they're busy. And nobody pressed them, you know. So, you know, take advantage of it while you can. But yeah, I mean,
So let's do this. I'll take it as an action item, write it down right now.
yeah, I'll work on it.
I'll start the email chain on this, and we can get everybody's kind of thoughts on tasks that could be done. Anything else on number 5? All right, new business number 1, Marquette Greenway Corridor Plan RFP representative selection. Tina, you want to give the summary on the scoring?
Yes, just last month, we put out an RFP. This is related to the Indiana Department of Natural Resources Lake Michigan Coastal Program grant to work on the Marquette Greenway trail operations and corridor plan. We received 2 responses, both of them responsive and complete. And we had our selection committee review both proposals and go through the scoring criteria. Based on the scoring criteria, Avon Marsh received the highest number of points. Planned Environmental Associates was a close second.
It was 201 to 199, correct?
Yeah, in terms of the point.
So it's all close. And then just as a reminder, correct me if I'm wrong, but Evan Marsh is 40K, AEP was 33.
That's correct. And this is a grant, so it is a fixed amount.
We need to choose one of the two. Entertain a motion to get us started on that.
Solid Marsh and the other one is
PA,
PEA.
PEA.
PEA. I move we accept PEA's offer. It's a lower cost. Both are eminently qualified. And it would be good to get somebody else in the mix here. So that's for whatever it is, 33.
35 is the total.
33.
Okay. Motion, Angie.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensland,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarr,
Yes.
Commissioner Bozak,
Yes.
Commissioner Loving.
Yes. Approval of claims register?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
One other item, sorry, this did not make the new business. This is related to the Market Greenway RTP grant. Part of advancing that grant is the state asked us to expend some funds to stay in compliance with federal expectations. So they asked us to begin with trail amenities. Our original grant, we talked about 2 benches, 2 bike racks, and 1 receptacle on this project that matches what you see here at the Next Level Trails at the trailhead. So essentially, I'm going to go back to that manufacturer or their current representative to begin to kind of reorder matching set, if you will. Right now, I just have the 2000, late 2020 costs. For the 2 benches, the 2 bike racks and receptacle. Based on 2020, it was, the cost would be around 5,000. Plus, you know, in 2020, shipping around 500. But tonight, what I'd like to do, because I haven't yet talked with the new vendor, is ask for authorization to proceed with the purchase of the 2 benches, the 2 bike racks, and the receptacle in an amount not to exceed 7,500. That just gives us a little bit of contingency, you know, for cost of materials, increase in shipping costs. And in the rare event that maybe that model is not available anymore, we have to look at a different model. So that is what I'm looking for action on to be able to move forward this month on this activity for the grant.
Make a motion for Tina to move forward with purchasing the 2 benches, the 2 bike racks, and the garbage can. Not to exceed 7,500. Second.
A second discussion,
Who is the second?
Angie.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bozak,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarr,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensland,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Loving.
Yes. Approval of claims, I'm sorry, let's have this discussion on Angie makes a good point. If you look at, please, the second page of the budget packet. I'm sorry, first page, second chart. PT paramedic wages, it's the 3rd line down. In 2021, we allocated $272,861.50 to cover ambulance coverage for the town. We treated it as a development activity because, I mean, just to be blunt, who wants to live in a place where there's no ambulance? So we looked at it as development because it's providing a service that I think is vital to attracting interest in the town. It's time to have that discussion again on what we want to do. So if you look at the cash balance at the top, you'll note that the first half infusion hit redevelopment operations in May. That's kind of where, I mean, in summary, that's where it is. It's time to have a conversation again around what we want to do with the ambulance. Collections, I would say, are not not good.
I think it's about 13,000 a month for payroll, I believe.
Yeah.
And in May, they brought in 9,036, so we have a shortfall no matter what, so even to be able to continue it, the money has to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of this at all, but.
So the council is working on transitioning trash service to a feed service that is gonna free up money in the town budget to start covering this, but we're not there yet. So if we want to bridge the gap, I think it would be wise to buy the town that time, but
You know, if I may, does anybody remember from the 1980s? Is anybody old enough here to remember from the 1980s? NOPAC. That was Northern Porter County Ambulance Corporation. I believe it was a nonprofit. They actually built the ambulance shed over in Chesterton, and the county and NOPAC was, my understanding is there were a lot of Northern Porter County entities that were behind it, because we were at that time in exactly the same position as we are now. Ambulances coming out of Valpo were taking forever to get to North County and to get back. And of course, the hospital was in the city. But there was a big fight and a lot of politics involved and a lot of, posturing. But the thing is, it wasn't each town fending for themselves. The towns all got together and did something together to solve the problem. And they did. They created NOPAC, and NOPAC solved the problem. And eventually, Porter County absorbed NOPAC after cooler heads reigned and made it part of the county ambulance service. All right. Now the county has grown. We're right back to where we were before. They have not expanded the service. They to keep up with the population, et cetera, et cetera. This is not a problem that Burns Harbor can solve on its own. This is, this is more than Burns Harbor can handle, and everybody else is in the same position. Some of them are managing to pay for it, like Chesterton, but Chesterton's big. I don't know what Porter is doing, and I don't know what anybody else is doing, but this is a problem that we've been here before in the past. You can go to the morgues of the Chesterton Tribune and read all about it, because it was in every single issue. It was a huge thing back in the 1980s, or maybe it was late 90s, I don't know, or early 90s. But anyways, we've done this before, and we're going about it the wrong way now to solve the problem. Every man for himself every town for itself is not going to solve this problem. And by doing what we're doing, we're letting the county slide, we're letting them off the hook. And we should be pressuring the county to do their jobs and to keep up that ambulance service for the county. Instead, we're letting them skate. That's my opinion. You know, this is, we've been doing this for how many years now, paying for our own ambulance service, and I understand the need, okay? And I'm not anti-ambulance, but one, the RDC is not the place that really should be funding salaries for ambulance. We can buy them an ambulance. We paid for a lot of the fire department addition for the ambulance. That's all fine. That's RDC's kind of stuff. But paying for salaries, no. No. Again, well, I'm not going to repeat myself. I'm just going to say, we're doing this all wrong. We've been here before. Somebody's got to hold the county's feet to the fire, and it's going to be solved on a county or a state level. Yeah, and it's not going to be solved by Burns Harbor. That's for our insurance. But we can't keep doing this. I mean, that's a connector trail that we can't build now because we're paying for salaries instead of pavement.
I completely agree.
And we've been doing this for like, what, 5 years? So there's 5 trails that we can't build, and we'll never be able to build. We'll never get that money back. We're supposed to be building stuff for this town, you know, for everybody, and to attract other businesses. We're not here to provide ambulance service. That's the town council's thing, but it's not the RDC's thing. So no.
Holistically, I agree with you. But if we stop funding it, it closes, and then we are essentially gambling people's lives then on whether or not people in Valparaiso are gonna come save us, and they're not, because they don't really want to.
Yeah,
And I just don't see them doing anything.
I'm not saying we fund all of it, I just say we fund the literally the gap in their deposits to that payroll. It takes time, even if we were to decide to close the ambulance service, it takes time to be able to close it with the state. You can't just go
You
close,
can't
you can't just
close
close an ambulance service either.
Yeah.
There's an entire procedure you have to take, and it can take a couple months. We've done it through every nook and cranny of our budget.
Excuse me. Does the county have an EMS board? I think that would be the place.
They have 5 ambulances right now. 3 of them are dedicated to service, 2 are dedicated to transfers, so hospital to nursing home transfer type activities. They're currently pulling an ambulance out of Lake of Four Seasons, is covering everything in the county, that southwest area of the county, and they're pulling from they're pulling the Portage ambulance south into Valpo, and they're pulling us into Valpo now. There's just so little coverage. They make no, the county is making no effort to allocate anything. You think they're gonna spend it for an ambulance service for North County?
I know.
Sarah has
Oh, I'm sorry.
Would there be a possibility of getting the North County communities together and to approach the county as a group instead of as an individual?
We've
Because
attempted
there's strength in numbers.
there is. The problem is not everybody's on the same page. Some are willing to, are willing to let it go and settle for the, I won't name communities out loud, but some are willing to let it go and not do anything. And others don't want to play with other communities. We've tried.
Can you
We've
take the
reached out.
ones who want to play together and go?
At this-
Somebody's got to start, it
at
can't
this-
just keep going.
At this point, nobody wants to play.
Okay.
There's not a single one.
I make a motion that RDC approves the gap in funding for ambulance wages until council figures out a solution to the end of the year, or we start to close the ambulance service through 2022.
I think we would need a definitive dollar amount and a time. You can't just say cover it. So it needs to be a dollar amount that we're willing to allocate and a timeline. It has to be a hard date.
Can we say give up to, cover it up to a certain amount?
What math are you doing right now?
13,000 a month, 7 months.
Times 7.
That would be like, I would think that'd be the max that would be.
91.
Yeah. But I mean, they do have, like, they had $9,000 in deposits this last month. They've had deposits, it's just not enough to cover it. So. Bill,
He's outside, yes. Although he looked over this way when he said his name.
I was sworn he was there.
Would you like me to repeat them?
No.
No. Okay, I say, we allocate $100,000 through December 31st, 2022. It's not gonna work because it's gonna have to go into 2023 for the last payroll. Through $100,000 through January 31st, 2023 to cover the gap in payroll wages for part-time ambulance service. With the clause that any deposits that ambulance service gets
Goes
towards it first.
so really it's not to exceed 100.
Yes. Second.
Discussion.
I completely understand your point, Brad, I do. We either have to figure out a solution, how to pay for it through council, or we are gonna have to start the process of closing it down. And I've talked to Bill about the process of closing it down, and it will take a couple months. You cannot just stop. I've been asked about like slacking out nights and putting it back on the account, and even that is a process, so. No, we're on the hook for the wages somehow, the town's on the hook somehow. We have searched.
For what it's worth trying for a few years to see.
Yes,
It would actually break even.
it's not,
But we've reached the point where we know it's not.
yeah.
Anything further? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensland,
No.
Commissioner McCarg,
Yes.
Commissioner Bozak,
Yes.
Commissioner Loving.
Yes.
Make a motion to adjourn.
We have a couple more things. Approval of claims register,
So. Second.
discussion. Roll call.
Commissioner Ensland,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarg,
Yes.
Commissioner Bozak,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Loving.
Yes. Approval of financial report, May 2022.
So moved.
Discussion. Roll call.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Bozak,
Yes.
Commissioner McCarg,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensland,
Yes.
Commissioner Loving.
Yes, go to the order.
Motion adjourned.
Second,
Discussion. Roll call.
Commissioner Bozak,
yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Ensland,
Yes.
Commissioner McCord,
Yes.
Commissioner Loving.
Yes. Adjourned.